are 5 areas in the presentation that allow our agent to be professional, set themselves apart from the competition, and most importantly, pre-sell the appointment. So when you get all 5 of those, and the seller's giving you these dates, and you have all 5 commitments, there is no close. All right, so welcome back to the Listing Agent Show. With me, I have, of course, my co-host, Ren Jones from Vulcan 7, who is our proud sponsor of the show. So if you guys want to learn more about what it is they can do to help you grow your listing-based business, I'm going to put a link to Vulcan 7 right underneath this video. And if you want, click on the link. You guys can check out about everything they do. So today, Ren, we're going to talk about really 3 steps to winning the listing. What a real estate agent can do at their next listing appointment to walk out of there with a contract at a full commission. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you get to that listing appointment. The only thing that matters is you walking away with that listing. So good to see you. Welcome back.
Thank you, Brandon.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. There's 3 steps that we're going to walk you guys through as you watch this video. All of the things that we're going to talk about as far as scripts and dialogues and things of that nature. If you want, feel free. You can download my script book. I'll put a link in the description. So step number 1 is, what do you do when you set an actual listing appointment? In other words, when you set the appointment, is that enough? Or are there some things that we can do to do what I call, Ren, which is pre-selling the appointment? What can we do ahead of time? Because when we set that appointment, I believe that is when the interview process starts, not when you get to the house. But they're listening to you, how you're treating them. From the second they say, yes, we'd like to interview you, Ren, the interview starts right now. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that. And it's amazing how over the years, how many times I would run into somebody that they hadn't met with somebody, but based on the information early on, they were anticipating this person. They even thought maybe they were going to go ahead and list with that person. I mean, so the setup was amazing. So I understand you have a good setup.
Yeah, that is exactly right. So here's what we do. So when we set the appointment, we have all of our coaching clients go through what we call the upfront listing agreement script. And there are 10 questions specifically on this script that allows our agent to be professional, set themselves apart from the competition, and most importantly, pre-sell the appointment. And what I mean by pre-sell the appointment, there's 2 things occurring that I know you know very, very well. One, we are setting ourselves up in a position to win at the appointment based on the conversation we have after we set the appointment. So it increases our likelihood that we get the listing. That's number 1. Number 2, when we go through this script and this conversation, we understand, do we actually have a listing appointment here or not? And the reason why agents don't want to ask the questions on this script is because they're scared of the answer.
They don't want those answers. No,
they don't want the answers. They don't want the answers. And the script that I'm referring to, if you guys are watching the show, there's just a link to my script book. You guys can grab grab that script. But as you and I know, Ren, they don't want to ask these questions to understand if it's a qualified appointment or not, because if they find out it's not qualified, what do they have to do? They got to get back on the phone and start prospecting more, which, God forbid, I don't want to do any more prospecting. So they don't ask those questions.
No, and they're hoping they get in front of them and just change their mind somehow, motivate them to sell. And,
that's right.
And
well, and what I always say is our job is not to, and you bring up a great point, our job is not to convince people to sell their houses. Right. We're looking to set appointments with people who have already made the decision they want to sell their house. And our job is to go and earn the business versus our competition. So you're exactly right. We're not in the convincing people to move business. We're in the business of providing a world-class service to people that have already decided they want to move. And there's a huge distinct difference. So that's number 1. And so anything you want to add to that pre-qualification process? Or do you think we're in pretty good shape?
No, I think that covers it very, very well, because the more information we have, the more we know how to close them.
Exactly. The more information we have up front, the better we can serve the seller the better they can, the more value they get from the appointment, which in turn, the increases the likelihood that we actually win the listing. So that's
Right.
number one. So number two, we go through these questions and we understand, okay, we've got a really good appointment. We have a very motivated seller. We've set ourselves apart from the competition. Step two in the process is when you hang up that phone, there's a couple things that I coach agents to do, Ren. Number one is I want them to send that seller a calendar invitation. And it's amazing to me that real estate is the only industry that when you set an appointment, when a professional sets an appointment with the prospect, that we're not setting calendar invitations. Any company out there, financial planner, tech company, any company, when they set an appointment, you can bet that they're going to send you a calendar invitation, and there's going to be some concrete days and times on when that meeting is going to occur so that the likelihood of that appointment actually happens. That's number one. Number two, and it's not to go down that rabbit hole too much, but it still baffles me why real estate agents don't operate from a calendar. Don't get it. I cannot understand how they live life with all these appointments and kids and children and dentist appointments. And I said, let me see your calendar. Well, I don't use a calendar, Brandon. I just have this little piece of paper right here. And so anyway, that's crazy.
I don't know how you do that. You miss a lot of things.
You missed a lot of things. All right. So we send the calendar invitation. In addition to that, we send a confirmation email, Ren, to the seller that includes our marketing plan of action and a link to a interactive CMA. And the reason we do this, as you know, is we want the seller to do two things when we send that email. One, we want them to review the marketing plan prior to the appointment. We don't want to spend our time at the appointment going back and forth on, well, what are you going to sell my house? Well, Johnny's going to do that for 5%. You're going to do that. We don't want to commoditize the presentation. So we send them the marketing plan ahead of time. And then we send them the CMA where they're able to click through the photos. There's a lot of time that can be saved by sending those two things ahead of time. Again, pre-selling the appointment.
Well, yeah, and also when you send that CMA ahead, and people are like, "Well, I don't want to send it to them. I want to be able to explain it." And they might just say, "Don't come out," because they didn't like what they saw.
Yeah.
But there's something about getting that frustration out 24 hours ahead, because if you just spring it on them and then you try to get them to sign, they need to think it over. But if the day before they're looking at these comparables and they're like, I thought the Daniels sold their house for much more. I can't believe that. And they go through that. Then they wake up the next morning like, well, I guess it's worth 475. You know, we were thinking 575. Because if you spring it on them, they're going to wait a day, and then the next time your competitors sitting in front of them, and then they've decided that you need that time for them to digest that, and then you show up.
That is exactly right. Like you hit the nail on the head. We send them the reality, and then we give them time to digest the reality. So then when we're at the appointment, they've accepted the truth for what it is. And so you're exactly right. So they don't leave to say, oh my gosh, I got to really think about this. Right. I didn't realize my house was only worth this. And you're right. The competitor comes in right behind you after they've digested. They win the listing because that time went past.
Right.
Yeah. So let me show my screen what I'm talking about, because using words is one thing, showing is a whole nother thing. So this is what we send the client ahead of time. So we give all of our coaching clients a copy of this resume, and then we brand it to their company, of course. But we send the client our resume packet. All right. So you can call it a pre-listing packet. Talks a little bit about the agent, your specialty, if you specialize anything, our 10 commitments to the seller, our mission statement, our marketing plan of action. Remember, we want the seller to go through all of this before the appointment. We don't want to get caught in, detailed conversations about what you're going to do to sell my house. We talk about the listing process, right? We talk about our value proposition, what we charge for commission. We go through all of that and past client testimonials. So we send this to every single seller prospect ahead of the meeting. Again, the goal is before we walk in is to pre-sell that appointment as much as possible so that the likelihood when we walk in, Ren, that thing's pretty much a done deal. And so that's
But folks, you've got to do it the way he's outlining here. You've got to do that. The CMA's got to be early. You got to get everything that you're going to do to them in advance. You got to make sure that they looked at it. Otherwise, you end up with this long feature-based presentation. They get worn out. You don't get, I mean, and it goes off track. It just goes off the rails.
That's right. That's right. If the presentation starts to go over 45 minutes, there's something massively wrong. And what we know about humans in the psychology of selling is that a confused mind can't make decisions. So you always end up with the seller saying, well, you gave me a lot of information tonight, Ren. Let me think it over and I'll get back to you. And we always know you never hear back from them.
Right, exactly. And you want to keep this batting average. And I'm sure the batting average is somewhere around 75 to 80% of the time you win.
That's right.
You're doing this right. You're running it at 75 to 80%. The 80% when you get good at it, 75% if you're just following this verbatim.
That's right. And now let's get into step 3 that takes the batting average from 80% as high as 95%. We have coaching clients right now. I'll leave their name.
Oh, really? 90. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's
We have one coaching client that has gone 100%. She did 50 listing appointments, 50 listings taken in the last 12 months. And she followed the outline that I'm about to share in step number 3.
Wow. That's amazing. It's amazing.
Incredible. It's incredible. Highest I've ever seen in my career. So, and here's why. Okay. I'm going to spend a little time.
And we're in a market where you can get away with that because everything sells. So
that's right. That's right. So here's really, really good tactical training for the audience, Ren. When we get into 3, we talk about, okay, step 3 is what do I do when I go on the appointment to increase the likelihood that I walk out of there with a signed contract at a full commission? Well, here's what we teach all of the agents in our coaching program. The first thing to understand, most amateur salespeople, new people to selling, they think that the closing process happens at the end of the presentation. And what we know to be true is if someone has a problem closing the sale, it's because they opened the sale incorrectly. They didn't pre-qualify, they didn't send the information, and they didn't do what I'm about to outline in step number 3. And I see you shaking your head. I think you agree with that. Is that right?
Right. You can't just all of a sudden go to the end with your big close. Well, folks, what do you think?
That's right.
Come on. This is, there's closing all the way through.
Exactly right. You and I are so aligned. And so we call that, Ren, the 5 micro commitments. In other words, there are 5 areas in the presentation that the sale occurs. And if you follow these 5 steps that I'm going to outline, this 5-step framework, when you get to the end, you almost virtually guarantee yourself that you got the listing. So let's walk them through it. Micro commitment number 1, as soon as we sit down with the seller, we simply, what we call in our coaching program is setting the agenda. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, here's what I'd like to do tonight. I'd simply like to walk you through what I'm going to do to position your property in the market so that we sell it at a premium. Once we go through that, I'm going to break down all the numbers for you so you can get a really good idea of how much you can expect to walk away with. And at the end of our meeting, it's going to be clear whether or not it makes sense for us to move forward. Is that something that you guys are comfortable with? And we, right out of the gate, we're looking to pull out objections and gain their agreement that at the end of this meeting, both of us are going to make a decision.
Right. And folks, if you don't go through this, if let's say you left that last part out, I don't think I want to say that's too strong. Yeah. What happens is they think you're there to present and leave. But you're saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And then at the end, we're going to, make a decision and get together on this. Right.
Well, either way. And here's the thing. So you and I talk a lot about detaching from the outcome. Let me give an example to the audience. Detaching from the outcome is letting the prospect know that you're fine either way. If you get the listing, I'm fine. If I walk out of here and I decide not to list the house, I'm perfectly fine. It's okay. And so when you do that, you level the playing field. And now you and the prospect both have equal leverage in the conversation. You don't give up all the power to the prospect. So to recap, step number 1, we set the agenda. We gain the prospect's commitment in the first sentence that at the end of our meeting today, we're going to make a decision together. whether or not we both think it makes sense to move forward or not.
Yeah.
Or not,
Hey,
but we gain that
based
agreement.
on what you want. If I don't think I can help you, that, and they're like, you wouldn't, they start understanding that this is a two-way street.
That's right. It's a partnership. So that's number one. So that's the micro commitment that we're looking for at the beginning of the presentation. Let's talk about micro commitment number two, which is price. So I teach all my coaching clients, we get right into the pricing presentation, because unless we can agree on price, there's really nothing else to talk about. So we go from setting the agenda, and then we go into the CMA presentation, and then we gain agreement around price. And this is the second micro commitment in the presentation of 5, that if we agree, you and the sellers, Ren, on the price, then we can keep presenting and keep moving forward. But that's micro commitment number 2. Number 3 is when we go to presenting the seller net sheet. When we break down all of the numbers, so the seller understands clearly the cost of selling and the amount of money that they're going to put in their pocket. Worst case bottom line. I teach all my coaching clients, Ren, to give a worst case scenario number so that we under promise and we over deliver every time at the closing table, so we can get repeat and referral business. And so here's the close. I go through all the numbers and I say, Ren, let me ask you a question. I circle the number at the net sheet and I say, is this a number that you can live with? Worst case scenario, knowing that chances are you're going to get more than this. Can you live with this number? When they say yes, that's the green light to proceed. If they say no, the presentation must stop. But that is micro commitment number 3. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the good news is, folks, a lot of your competition doesn't even do anything remotely close to this. They're winging it. They don't get down to financials very well, net sheet,
That's right.
Everything else. So this just sets you above and beyond. This shows your professionalism.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Ren. I did a webinar a couple of weeks ago. We had a couple hundred agents on the webinar, and I asked that question. I said, how many of you actually present the numbers in a seller net sheet, giving them 3 different scenarios? And like 90% was like, I never bring a net sheet.
Right.
Like,
they get this company they get a company flip chart and they go, we're number 1 on this, we're number 1 on this, and see this bar chart, we're number 1, see this pie chart, we're number 1. What do you think? You want to, and
you want to list your house? And you're right. And nobody cares. Nobody cares about your company or what place nobody cares about you.
Yeah, make it about them, folks. Make it about them. Show your professionalism. Go into numbers. You're setting yourself apart by using this professional presentation.
I would agree. All right. So let's talk about micro commitment number 4. So we talked about setting the agenda, getting that commitment there. We talked about gaining agreement around price. We gained agreement around pricing or with the numbers. Step number 4 is when we deliver our value proposition and our terms of agreement. So not the contract, our terms of agreement and our value proposition. And we gain the seller's commitment on what it is that we offer, how we position ourselves that's different than our competition, and we gain that client's commitment around that. In other words, we talk about our compensation structure. We talk about what they can expect from us from a communication standpoint, what they can expect from us from a service standpoint. And so when we go through all of those, micro commitment number 4 is gaining agreement with the seller to ensure that the seller is comfortable moving forward with us, assuming we had a working relationship. So we gain that agreement around step number 4. And only when we gain the agreement do we move forward to step number 5. Step number 5 is our plan of action. And there are 5 points of commitment in step number 5. That's how you guys can remember this. So watch this. So after we've gone through all of these in the presentation, we got the seller to say yes in the beginning. I'm comfortable with that. As long as this goes well, I'm comfortable moving forward. Okay, perfect. Step number 2, we got them to agree on price. Step number 3, we went through all the numbers and they said, yeah, I can live with that worst case scenario. Step number 4, yeah, we're really comfortable with you and we like what you have to offer. Step number 5 is now the plan of action. So specifically, number 1, we get a date for the professional photo shoot. Number 2, we get the showing instructions. Number 3, we get a key for the lockbox. Number 4, we get the seller to give us the location for sign placement. And number 5, we get a tentative go live date on the market. And so we go through all 5 of those in our plan of action. We're explaining to the seller how the process works, and we're writing in tentative dates. Now, Ren, we give all of our coaching clients a consumer-facing presentation outline that they follow, and they fill in the blanks. It makes this presentation very, very simple. And so when you get all 5 of those, and the seller's giving you these dates, and you have all 5 commitments, there is no close.
I was about to say, yeah, I mean, this is, I love this because I did this forever. I just started gathering information. I just assumed the listing, and that's what you're doing here. You're like, well, let's go through the photo date. Let's get the showings, and do you have a key, and blah blah blah. And then that's an assumptive close, folks. You don't have that pregnant moment like, well, do you want to get started? Which is hard. That's a harder hurdle. It's easier to collect this information and then just say, and the last thing I need you to do is sign this.
That's right. And so the whole point of winning listings, and we said it at the beginning of the show, the sale is a series of these little commitments, because we know humans have a tough time making large decisions, right? Like getting married, buying a car, buying a house. Like, these are massive decisions. We don't want to do that at the listing appointment. Great salespeople, based on the science, based on the data, when we understand how humans make decisions, we can apply that at the listing presentation. So we go through small micro commitments that are easy for the seller to agree to. And so they go through this entire process, Ren. And by the time we go through all 5 steps, and the seller is so comfortable with the agent, and they've already covered all of the major points, there are no areas of concern. There should be no objections. And the next step in the process is to complete the paperwork, and that is it. It makes it very, very underwhelming. It makes it very much more manageable for an agent to present this way, and for a seller to understand what value is being delivered on the agent side. And so it makes it very simple.
I love it. And I love, one of the biggest pieces in this is, the service and the value. Serve these people. They want to feel like you're serving them. They don't want to go through a book from your company.
They do not.
They want to know how you're going to serve them specifically. And this is solid.
Yeah. So, well, yeah. And hopefully you guys got like good, clean takeaways, because Ren and I, all we want to do is serve you guys, the real estate agent community, and make sure that we're providing value. So if you guys have questions, use the comments right underneath this video. We'll go back and we'll respond to those. If there's a topic that you want Ren and I to cover in the future, just put it in the comments and we will be happy to do that. So hopefully you guys got value from today. Thank you guys for watching the show. And Ren, you want to have any last words?
Yeah, follow this and keep getting wealthy.
I love it. Well, Ren, enjoy the rest of the week, my friend. I will see you guys soon. Thank you guys so much. And let's make it a productive week.